let's let's start seated. I think we're going to spend a pretty good amount of time on our back today. And let me make sure I've done all the things I need to do here. So nice comfy seat. Happy post holiday recharge. Ah, and just settling into a cycle of breath that feels easy to begin with. And then let's shift our breath cycle to a pause at the top with the lungs full and a pause at the end at the bottom with the lungs empty. And that pause can be equivalent or non-equivalent, just really consciously giving your body that break between each half of the breath. And then during that pause, so with the breath held on each end of the breath cycle, allow for some scanning of the physicality. So some conscious kind of seeking of what's going on within your body. So we'll use the potential of excess carbohydrate intake plus the removing of movement to be a little hyper aware of physical sensations. And then release the pauses, or when you feel like you've identified stuck points, residual stickiness points, release the pause and just concentrate your breath flow or energy into those spots that spoke up the most clearly. Any spots that hinted at dysfunction that send our breath, especially on the inhale side, to those areas. And we'll give ourselves just about 40 more seconds to play with this directing of breath. Does it feels appropriate for you? Eyes open if they are closed. Let's take the palms face down. So wherever our seat has landed us, palms just turned down. And give yourself a nice full inhale from the belly to the top of the lung space. And exhale. And flip the palm direction. And take that same breath. And exhale. And flip the palm direction. And same breath. Fully inhaling and fully exhaling. And then we'll flip the palm direction and take that last same breath. And returning to an exhale space and transitioning, I think, hands and knees tabletop. Let's create a nice solid base position. We're going to get a little more movement in than I was fully anticipating. So nice stable space here. Let's curl our toes like we were going to roll back into a down dog. So you have that toe mound energy and sink the seat back towards the heels. So depending on your toe extension capacity, this may be a very limited movement, or it's theoretically possible that you take the forehead down and you get the seat to the heels and you're super comfortable in this position. Just what feels appropriate for you. And then let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. Exhale out, tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone, and round the middle of the back. And think about that flexion energy in the middle of the spine. And then relax back to neutral. And assuming you still have the toes curled underneath you, let's just roll back into a down dog. And pay attention to that mid-back thoracic lumbar union and the alignment that the spinal column itself gets as you roll back into this space. And then let's walk our way forward into fold. From fold, inhale to half lift. Exhale back to fold. And then just reverse the direction of your hand. So likely the palms are going to face up here. And we're going to take that same inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Note the variance in the physicality with the hand positioning. Drift your awareness to your sacrum, and let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Really stacking the spinal column as we unwind our way up into our top space. And we'll bring our hands together at heart center. Think about an expansion of the collarbone, so a little retraction of the humeral head more than the scapula retraction. It's like that outer edge of the arms roll back, and then take your arms out nice and wide, palms down. And with the palms down, squeeze the scapula back so that we get that full shoulder retraction. And then externally rotate the shoulders by turning the palms up and get that extra little bit of space available to you in this scapular retraction. And then exhale your hands together at heart center. Still a little bit of a desire for that anterior collapse, that upper anterior collapse in the humeral head. Retract that back and settle in. And then one more time, let's inhale the arms out, palms down. Squeeze back through the scapula so we get that retraction. Rotate the palms up and then get that extra little bit of available space. Now, with the shoulders retracted, pay attention to where the hips, what happened to the hips, where the hips are within this space. Make sure the glutes are engaged enough so that you have that posterior anterior neutrality. And then keep that as you bring the hands together at heart center. So that as you land, Now the shoulders are much more inset into where they're supposed to be. And we have this anchoring, this energetic anchoring from the trunk space. Keep the hands at heart center, keep the energy in the belly and the glutes, and start to tilt your way forward to half fold. A big low back ask, but as long as we maintain that energy just below and just above the hinge, we should be fairly safe. And then just release yourself all the way into the fold and express the new depth available. Yes, nice, Annie. Beautiful. And let's plant our hands and we'll walk our way back into down dog. This will be the last down dog in class. This will be the last bit of energetic ask. And then let's come down to hands and knees tabletop. We'll flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. I think I'm going to ask for a little bit of additional awareness around the shoulder capsule. So pretty infrequent that we're thinking about the shoulder capsule in child's pose. But because we did so much shoulder work and mobility, I really want you to think about staying integrated in the shoulder capsule as you settle. And then from the shoulder girdle as your anchor, think about drawing energy into your tailbone so that you elongate the spine. Maybe some subtle core squeeze, but it could be a relaxation of that torso musculature while maintaining the engagement in the shoulder girdle, if that is within the kind of connectivity of your brain musculature response. And then let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop, and we'll extend the legs out in front of us into a little staff. Spine is tall. Let's just take a couple of rounds of breath here. Oftentimes staff is just a transitionary shape, right? So let's allow staff to be a shape that we can feel into a bit. Think about how hard it is to keep the torso erect and to keep this hinge at the hips without going into that spinal flexion. And note how much anterior musculature requirement there is, right? This feels like it's all a posterior musculature response or give, but really high abdominal engagement is what allows for the neutrality. And then use that lift that the upper abdominal muscles are giving you to sweep the arms up and feel that length in the rib cage, that expansiveness into that intercostal space, and then exhale forward into fold with that rib cage space as our focus. And so very different ask from a seated forward fold, right? I would say 99% of students in a forward fold are hamstring centric. Hopefully we've transcended that and we're generally posterior lumbar torso expansion, lumbar specific expansion, unless we have a very open hip hinge. Today, we're asking for rib cage expansion. And so we're thinking about the spaces in between the vertebrae and in between the wraparound bone structure, the scaffolding of the torso, and send your inhale breath into that four-dimensional expansion. And then send your energy into that two-dimensional lengthening. And we'll give ourselves just 15 more seconds to experience this. And we'll draw ourselves back up into seat. Let's take our blanket, and from shelf fold, let's go one unfolding so we get to a towel length. So if you're using a towel, that's probably ideal. And then we're gonna roll that. Actually, let's not roll that. Let's fold that hot dog style and then hot dog style again. So we end up with a little bit more of a rectangular shape, a very elongated rectangle. And that's going to come down behind us with as much kind of uniformity in the fold as is possible. And so looking to have an equivalent amount of density on the left and right side. And tailbone's going to bump up against that prop. And we'll just slowly lower ourselves down onto the waiting prop. Arms can come out towards cactus, knees can be bent here. This is going to be a passive expansion. And the reason we went with a flat prop instead of a rolled prop is I really want this to be about the spinal column relaxing. So we can use less musculature engagement to keep the torso centered on the prop because it's flat. Think about just continually releasing the musculature of the torso so that your body can receive that space you've created with this little subtle prop lift. So there's this little village, this very idyllic village surrounded by brooks and streams and forests. And in this little village, there's a shoemaker, a cobbler. And he has been crafting this very specific shoe that is elegant and beautiful and functional for decades. And everyone in the village wears this shoe. There's only one shoemaker. But because the quality of these shoes, the durability of these shoes is so exceptional, people come from all over to buy their shoes from this guy. We're going to give ourselves about 70 more seconds here. This guy has this cobbler has crafted a community within this village that he loves and appreciates, and he enjoys his mornings of sipping coffee and talking to customers, listening to the birds, the streams, hearing the wind rustle the leaves of the forest. And when it feels appropriate for you, let's roll off of our prop. So one side or the other, whatever side feels best. most beneficial for you this morning. And then we'll slide that prop out from underneath us. And let's take that and just fold it in half. So we end up with a little bit of an elongated block shape. And we'll bring our knees back to neutral and place that elongated block in between the knees. Then bring your feet somewhere between a fist and a half apart. So maybe an inch to 2 inches closer than they'd normally be. And squeeze the thighs maybe 15% or so. Take your hands and take them palms up down by your side, and then lift yourself into a neutral bridge. And then squeeze the shoulders up towards the ears and push the knees down towards the bottom of your mat. And you'll feel how the glutes are forced to activate, but it's a very high glute med requirement, not a lot of supportive glute max musculature. And then relax yourself back down. Keep the blanket where it is, and let's let both knees fall over towards the left. Looking for that lateral edge of the hip girdle to relax here. Let's inhale our knees back to neutral. Ensure that you set the foot positioning that fist to fist and a half distance, so just a little bit closer than we'd normally have them. And then give yourself that 15-20% squeeze, lift yourself up into your neutral bridge. Pull your shoulders up, so palms up towards the ceiling. Pull the shoulders up, push the knees down, and we want kind of the, lateral anterior posterior chains to get tight, to get taut right around this trunk space. That's what we're looking to do here. And then once you feel like you fatigued that trunk space musculature a bit, let's release down and let the knees fall over to the second side, the right side. And arms can just relax so where it's comfortable as we do this. And we want the hip girdle to be at ease. And we just breathe and relax here. When you feel balanced, left to right, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. We can set that blanket to the side for a moment, and let's engage with our sphere prop. And we're going to take that ball, rolled up sock, whatever we have, and tuck it just below the bony structure on the hip. So we want to be in the soft tissue, kind of at that glute med max union on the left side. And so hopefully we have a little bit of extracurricular sensation in that area. That's kind of what we're hoping for, shooting for. And we're going to keep the ball tucked in. So if you need to press it in, whatever we need to do to keep it there, let your knees fall over towards the left. And you don't need to go all the way into the twist here, right? There, especially if you have a super high density lacrosse ball, you're going to feel this pretty intensely. We are looking to just capture that musculature. The knees can be very minimally rotated to get that. And we just want to breathe and relax. If you're in a point where the ball is so painful you can't breathe and relax, that's your fault, not mine. Back it off. Be gentle to yourself. And let's give ourselves 30 more seconds just to experience the relaxation of the musculature. As you relax, as you ease, the knees can work further into the twist, right? We don't have to pause the physical rotation. We just want to slow that down so that our body can be receptive to it. And then we'll bring our knees back to neutral. And let's take our ball straight over to the second side. So finding that same union point, that little bit of awareness point, and then letting the knees start to move towards the right until you feel that musculature grab, that reaction, and then pausing and relaxing and breathing. Really speaking to our nervous system through our breath. And letting our body know that it's okay, it's safe, we're in control. The sensation is not a sensation of pain, but a sensation of awareness. Last 20 seconds here on the second side. Remembering that you can ease into the expansive capacity of the twist as your body relaxes. And we'll bring our knees back to neutral. And take that ball out, set that to the side, let the bottoms of the feet come together, and let the knees fall out wide. Almost no lateral restriction here, right? It is all this medial line now. We have freed up the lateral capacity in the external rotation. And now it's just, can we stabilize with this medial line? So we won't be here super long. We'll spend another 20 seconds here. And then we'll bring our knees back to neutral. Kneecaps point towards the ceiling. We're going to re-engage our ball. And we are headed just below the rib cage. So at the top of the lumbar here, starting on the left side once again. So think about the ball can be as far to the lateral edge, right? So we can go all the way to just next to the spinal column or all the way to that outside edge. We don't want to be on any of the bone structure though. So we are below the bones, below that final rib, and then just adjusting the leg position so legs can be extended or bent. The bending of the knees actually intensifies the shape here because it neutralizes the lumbar and creates more pressure on the ball. So to alleviate some sensation, you can extend the legs or extend one of the legs, or if that isn't enough alleviation, you can push down into the feet, squeeze the glutes, and lift the musculature away from the ball or sphere-like object. And then we're just going to breathe. So one day this traveling merchant comes to town and buys a pair of shoes from the cobbler. And this merchant immediately recognizes the quality of the craftsmanship, the value in the transaction cost, and proposes an idea to the cobbler. He says, "Come with me to the big city. There, your business will grow beyond your wildest dreams. You'll make more money than you know what to do with, and I can guarantee that." And he says, we'll go into business together. I'll write you a check to get you started. And you'll become a incredibly wealthy man. And the cobbler listens to this sales pitch and starts thinking about this new experience and what it would be like to be in a place where fashion is appreciated and things are always new and things are always changing. And of course, what it would be like to be fabulously wealthy. We're going to give ourselves 60 more seconds here. And so after some time and some thought, the cobbler decides to take this merchant up on his proposal. And he moves to the big city where everyone seems to be thriving, at least financially. And soon enough, so is he. He is, as the merchant promised, making more money than he can spend, selling more shoes than he can make, raising the prices as high as he can imagine, and he still can't keep up with production. But then, of course, because it is the big city, fashion trends start to change, and he starts to, for the first time in his hobbling career, venture off from his standard shoe production and starts making new fashion styles to keep up with the latest trends. When you're right, when you're ready, we are going to remove that ball, take the energy into the toe mounds and heels, lift our belt line just like an inch or so, slide the hips over to the left an inch, maybe two, and then let both knees fall over towards the right. And get this nice deep lumbar twist. This will be a bit of a transition here, so we won't be here too long. Knees come back to neutral. Energize the feet so you can bring your torso back to neutral and then re-engage your spear prop. That is going to come underneath the right side, more or less mirroring your placement on the left side, below the rib cage, but high in that soft tissue supporting the lumbar spine. And then we breathe here. Feeling into that sensation, reminding yourself that you have the ability to control the depth of this ball engagement with your soft tissue. Extending the legs, bending the knees, lifting the torso if it's appropriate. And so now as the seasons change, sometimes even more frequently than the seasonal change, the fashion trends change. And the cobbler has to create new shoes to match the latest style. And now every so often you'll create a style that won't be received well by the population of the big city. And now for the first time in the cobbler's life, people are coming to him and complaining about the quality of his work. The new toe style seems to be bursting at the rivet, something he's never had a problem with his original style. And he has all this money. And he has all this demand. But he keeps thinking about the experience that he had in his little village when he'd wake up, sip some coffee, and speak to the people of his community and connect with the people of his community. Thinking back to a time when interactions weren't transactional. There was real depth and care in the connection. We have about 70 more seconds here in this second side. And when it feels appropriate, as it feels appropriate, let's let our ball be removed from underneath us. We'll bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already there. We'll push down into the toe mounds and heels just enough to slide our hips an inch and a half to the right, and we'll let our knees fall over to the left, second side. And just settling and easing into the capacity of this twist, using that hip space, using that lumbar space, using our spinal alignment that we've crafted thus far. And when it feels appropriate, as it feels appropriate, let's bring our knees back to neutral. Push down in the toe mounds, bring your torso back to neutral. As the torso comes to neutral, let's pull our thighs in towards our rib cage and give yourself this nice little squeeze. Try to keep your spinal column neutral against the mat and squeeze the shoulders back. See if you can feel that expansiveness in between the vertebrae, or that realignment of the vertebrae with this new soft tissue space. And then let's relax our left foot down to the mat. Interlace the fingers behind the right hamstring and extend that right leg towards the ceiling. Does not need to be pointed at the ceiling, just directionally towards the ceiling. And then squeeze the shoulders up towards the top of your mat, and the collarbones or the lateral edge of the shoulders down towards your mat. So really creating expansiveness across the shoulder girdle. And then bend the right knee, draw the left knee into the mirror, and give yourself that nice little compression once again. Over to side two, right foot comes down, left leg extends towards the ceiling, hands interlace. We just find that room and space. Retract the left thigh, pull the right into mirror. Last little compression squeeze. Feet come down to the mat. Arms can open towards cactus if it's appropriate. Let's let our knees start to dynamically move, exploring the room you've created, the space you've created. Eventually, we're going to let our knees fall over to one side or the other, whatever side feels most beneficial first. And we're just going to settle in there. One day, the merchant comes over with this huge burlap sack full of gold, tosses it on the cobbler's counter, this huge smile on his face. And, I'm so happy we went into business together. Aren't you, old friend? He pats him on the shoulder. And he says, I have something to show you. And the cobbler's like trying to get a word in. He's like, I want to talk to you too. And the merchant's like, oh, don't worry. We can get to that. We can get to that. And he pulls out this paper. And on the paper, there's 13 or 14 new shoe designs. And he says, I've had my people go across the oceans to find the newest, hottest trends in footwear. This is what I want to produce next month. The cobbler's thinking to himself, he's never made more than one design in a month. And he starts to object. He's like, we've never made that many. I can't make that many new designs. And the merchant kind of looks over at this pile of gold. Like, this could be 12 times larger next month. Let's get to making the shoes. Last 15 seconds here on this first side. When it's appropriate, we'll inhale our knees back to neutral. Pause for a moment of realignment with your breath. So a relaxation into realignment so that your body softens, so the musculature of your body softens, and the bones can find their way back into neutral. And then we'll exhale our knees over to that second side. And we'll be at ease here on the second side. Twenty seconds here on the second side. And when it feels appropriate for you, bring our knee. We'll settle into that neutral knee alignment. So knees finding their way back, and then we'll relax here. Relax so that our body can find its way back into an integrated neutrality. Be in enough ease so that the spinal column, that the structure of the body itself, can naturalize back to neutral. And then we'll ask ourselves if there are any adjustments, movements necessary or beneficial before Shavasana. And if there are, we'll offer those to ourselves. And when we're ready, we'll find our way into a shape where we can be still. And so the cobbler finally speaks up. He says, I've appreciated the opportunity you've given me to expand my business in this city. But I think our partnership is done. When you're ready for stillness, finding that and easing into that. And so the merchant hears the cobbler say that their business is done. He looks at him for a moment. He starts to laugh, and then he keeps looking at the cobbler, and he sees that the cobbler is serious. He says, "But your home here is this mansion. It's beautiful. Why would you want to go back?" This isn't your business here. It's this beautiful place and you're so successful and you're world renowned. What do you mean you're leaving that? We can get you more money if that's the deal. But the cobbler stays strong and he goes back to his old life with this new clarity, and he settles back into his old shop and he's just filled with joy. And he hears the familiar sounds of the birds and he has the familiar conversations with the people he's known for decades. And we'll start to bring some movement into our fingers and our toes. And he once again resumes his position as this beacon of love and peace and happiness in his community. Movement into the wrists and the ankles. Into the elbows and the knees. And the people of the community ask him, we heard it was everything there. Why did you come back? Movement into your shoulders and your hips. He admits, it's a beautiful place. This is a beautiful big city. They had everything you could ever want. Movement through the entirety of the body. Eventually, we'll allow that movement to transition us from the shapes we are in back into the seat. And the cobbler tells everyone kind of the same story. Your inner joy, your inner peace, your inner awareness is much more important in your happiness than your external circumstances. And with your spine tall, your breath fluid, and your eyes closed, let's inhale our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself of the importance of depth? And be aware that novelty is its antithesis. And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice. And for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, everybody. Love the heck out of you. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you had a beautiful holiday. I will be back tomorrow if you're looking to move. And we'll do this again next Sunday. If I don't see you tomorrow, have a beautiful week. Love the heck out of you. Mwah.